Hi, welcome to our talk. Today we're going to be talking about an artist-run alternative art space in Miami called the Bas Fisher Invitational. I'm Naomi Fisher. This is Jim Drain. There's Christy Gast, and over there's Richard Haley. Jim and I co-direct the space. Christy's been quite involved with the space over the last couple of years, and Richard is currently our solo show at the gallery. So what we thought we would do is we would show some images up here, and they're all going to be on a 10-second loop. So they're just going to be scrolling along as we're talking. They start out with these images, which are from past shows, and they kind of show kind of the things we do in a more larger spectrum, from talks, events, film screenings, benefit editions, and our current show with Richard. So let's see.
You want to talk about the history of the space?
Yeah. So the space started in 2004, and it was founded by myself and another artist who I shared my studio with at the time, Hernan Bass. We ended up with this really incredible large studio in the Design District, largely through the generosity of Craig Robbins and DACRA. It was this fantastic space that was huge. It was more space than we really needed as artists, and it was a moment in our careers where things were starting to go well internationally. And we were looking around at our peers and people we were excited about, and we're like, why aren't people as excited about these artists as we are? So we decided to do something about it. And we built some walls in our space and made the front part of our studio into an exhibition space. Another thing that really got us started with that was another artist, Clifton Childry. He had a grant, and he was like, part of the requirements of his grant was to show the work, and he wasn't quite sure where he was going to show it. So this just really furthered the fact that there was a need for amazing artists to have a space to show their work in Miami. We decided to name the space the Bas Fisher Invitational for a couple of reasons. One, we thought our names together sounded like a fishing tournament. It was kind of hilarious. And two, just the wording of invitational really spoke to what we were trying to do. We weren't trying to be a project space. We weren't trying to be a gallery. We were really just wanting to be a forum to invite someone that we were excited about to show what they were doing to the public.
So it's, in some ways, what we're discovering is, even though we do exhibitions, it's the focus should be on community building. Miami has so many really amazing artists, and so the goal was to have a sort of a space for a forum of discussion, because there are independent spaces in Miami like Locust Projects and galleries like Diet Gallery and Frederick Snitzer. So what we want to offer is something more agile and do not only exhibitions but talks and lectures and different kind of programming than a normal space would do.
Yeah, like for example, this slide right here is a really great talk by Dean Diderco. It was a kimchi Skillshare where he was teaching people how to make kimchi, but at the same time he was showing images about art and really discussing cultural fermentation. Like, what does it really mean to make art in this sort of soup of a community? What does it mean to kind of take ideas and just run with it? And we do other things, like this is a project with some kids. So we're like not just even trying to build within our own community of artists, but we also try to reach out within the community and do things with students and have internships and
I think
things.
Dean's a good person to show too, because he had a space in Brooklyn
Yeah.
called Parlor Projects that I think was, I'm sorry. Dean Diderco had a space called Parlor Projects where he did exhibitions bi-monthly, but it was not just about an exhibition, but it was about inviting people into his apartment and making a space for discussions. And I think our space, the BFI, really takes that as a model. So it was nice to bring Dean down and have him do this kimchi making discussion as well.
Yeah. I guess what it's scrolling through right now are some of our benefit editions. At first, the space started as a very casual endeavor. We really just had a space. There were artists we were excited about, and we were doing exhibitions with them. But as time moved on, it got, there's things started to happen. Artists that we showed, and we did sometimes their first show ever, they started to get noticed in the larger community. So people started to see, like, oh right, they have an eye. They're not just showing random artists. But we kept trying to build from there, and we started applying for grants because we realized that what we were doing really was benefiting people in a way, and our history was a launching platform for more to happen. And in 2008, we won a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation. They were running this extraordinary program here in Miami called the Knight Arts Challenge Grant, where anyone could apply. They could literally just have 150 words, something like that, and just have an idea. And if your idea got past a certain point, then you would have to do the full application. And we ended up doing that. We were just like, you know what, wouldn't it be great if our space that we've been doing for years could start funding artists, could start flying people in to do lectures, we could give fees to artists, we could really have this not just be, it would really help artists grow, really help our community get joined together and build, and actually have people get paid for it, because we're artists. We need this. We need.
No, it's been great to provide honorariums to
Yeah.
artists to do shows.
Yeah.
Because everything else, I mean, the shows before were just out of pocket, whether it was our pocket or the artist doing the show.
Yeah.
So it was great. It was very limited, but with the grant, we were really able to expand the scope of the BFI.
Yeah. So since then, we've been running basically as a nonprofit. We have a fiscal sponsor that we work through, so all contributions are able to be tax donations, tax write-offs, and we're continuing to grow. We actually just found out on Monday, it became official that we won our second Knight Arts Challenge grant, and with that we're going to be doing a program that we started a year and a half ago, kind of as an experiment, and it came out fantastic, and it was called Weird Miami. And I think Jim was going to talk a little bit more about that and where that's going to take us as a space into the future.
I think with Weird Miami was the first time where we saw the opportunity to make the space not just a place for exhibitions, but to take sort of the concept of BFI into the larger community. Christy Gast was one artist that we had lead a tour. Just to give you a background for the tours, you would sign up for a tour, and we rented a bus that seated 44 people.
A yellow school bus.
And the artists would create an itinerary with us, and Christy can discuss that more, but people would come onto the bus and not know how long the tour was or where they would go. It would just be this sort of matter of trust in some way. But each artist would try to show Miami from their point of view. So you were kind of seeing how an artist sees Miami, but Miami itself became the subject matter for the exhibition. So in this way, the exhibition space became, we called it a visitor center.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like the launching point for the exhibition itself being sort of more the tours, but then the exhibition space being the starting point for these tours. And so I think this kind of model is something that we want to explore more, whether it's media like online, or we of course want to do more tours with this grant. But seeing the exhibition space just as like one kind of model for engaging the community through the arts. So maybe I'll pass the mic over to Christy and have her talk about the tour that she did.
Thanks for the mic. So I moved to Miami from New York in 2008, and I'm an artist who's very interested in sort of infrastructure as a metaphor in a way. So in my own practice, I'm very inspired by Meryl Laudeman-Nicolet's notion that we can think of infrastructure as a social sculpture. And around the time of the Weird Miami tours, I was slowly and deliberately tap dancing around Lake Okeechobee, which is the headwaters of the Everglades. And anyone from Miami might be aware that Lake Okeechobee is surrounded by a dam that controls the flow of the water for flood control, and some of the major outlets of the water that used to go to the Everglades actually comes through the rivers that empty out of Miami. So the rivers have been canalized, and I decided to explore those rivers with the tour as an extension of my video installation called Herbert Hoover Dykes. So I I started to do a lot of research. I've used public records and looked up historic images of the rivers, and I found that there was a big and interesting connection between food production and the rivers. So we explored sites around the Miami River and the Little River. We went to, first we visited a studio where two biologists/artists raise very, very small corals, and they do video projections of these corals. This is called Coral Morphologic. And they actually also were just awarded a Knight Foundation grant for their project. So we went to their studio, which is on the Miami River, in a neighborhood called Spring Gardens, which we explored. And then we went to a marina. It's a small family operation, and it's just up the river from the Miami Circle, which is a big archaeological site. And it's just down the river, basically from the Miami Dolphins Stadium. So we spent some time talking with this family about their business. They have a small shrimping operation. Next, we went to the oldest house in Miami, which in the past was a kunti farm, which is one of our interesting native plants. So we just went sort of on and on through this exploration of other people's very passionate projects that happen along rivers. This is an image of the visitor center, the way that the show is installed in the gallery, and that's Adler with Guerrier with Agatha Wara.
He led the first Weird Miami bus tour, so it's really just another awesome artist in the community.
If I can interject,
Sure.
Christy, one of the great things about your tour was, I think people see Miami as sort of the culture here starting in the 1940s, but I think people don't realize that there's been civilization here for 10,000 years. And I think that's what you pointed out there, how just going to the shell mound, we could see that there is this history that maybe isn't so well known. And I think that was one of the points of the tours, was sort of to bring out aspects of Miami that aren't valorized or honored or recognized, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So like when people come to Miami Beach, they get like a map of Miami, and these things aren't really discussed.
Yeah, and
So-
this image too is what Christy was talking about, where she was tap dancing around the Herbert Hoover Dike. Yeah.
And this is an image from a publication that I made together with Melissa Memory, an archaeologist who's in the audience. She led the tour with me, and these are sort of prehistoric, and contemporary images of how people used and use rivers in Miami, sort of collaged together for a small publication, a zine-style publication that we gave all of the participants on the tours. So actually, that leads us to some images of Richard's work, and I will.
Well, maybe just in
Yeah, you
Richard.
guys should.
So for in December, in November we opened Richard's show, and so we invited Christy to be the curator for Richard, and so maybe I'll just pass it to you.
Yeah, that's fine. So. Several things, like for me, I really like how, speaking of infrastructure, how the Bas Fisher Invitational sort of is the infrastructure for artists in Miami. It's a space, as Jim and Naomi were saying earlier, that can really kind of turn on a dime and respond to what artists are talking about and thinking about really quickly, and then organize programming that sort of mirrors our interests for the public, and so that we can sort of get more deeply involved with ideas ourselves. So when I moved here in 2008, the most interesting thing I found that was happening on a regular basis was an event called Theory Night, where artists would propose critical texts that they would like to read and discuss, and meet on a weekly or bi-weekly basis at the Bas Fisher Invitational, and just over beers talk about super interesting texts. Issues like sincerity. There was one about the Rand Corporation's study of the arts in America, so sort of how the military-industrial complex understands the arts. Just super interesting topics, and they were all proposed by artists. And
And this was
So-
led by Rebecca Trieb, the
Yeah, absolutely.
associate curator at MoCA, North Miami.
Yeah, she did a really amazing job organizing that program, and so that meant a lot to me as an artist to see. Oh, there's this beautiful platform in Miami for where artists' voices absolutely influence the programming, and it's kind of a springboard. And so, getting to know Jim and Naomi more, I learned that the gallery sort of functions as a place for artists to have first solo shows in Miami. And so when we talked about the November-December slot for this year, I thought, oh, actually, I know an artist I would really like to bring down, Richard Haley, who is originally from California and works in Detroit and does work that really responds to the city in a way that I find is quite ephemeral and poetic. And I knew that he'd been doing a lot of work in Detroit and wanted to bring him down to do some of his projects in Miami. So if you made it to the Bas Fisher Invitational, or even if you didn't, one of Richard's projects is a black rainbow appearing in the night sky for the duration of the exhibition. And maybe I can sort of pass it along to Richard to talk about your work and your show and sort of how it's been to show here in Miami at the BFI.
Oh, okay. As Christy said, I'm not from Miami, and I've been here. I only was acquainted with the Bas Fisher through Christy, so I'd never met Jim and Naomi. But it was an amazing opportunity to show there or have my work up there. But I think what Naomi said earlier, what I think is most important about the space is she said it was a place for artists to grow and to serve artists. It wasn't necessarily supposed to be a traditional gallery or a traditional nonprofit. It was just a place for artists to grow. And I think that's what I'll just briefly talk about. So they were talking about these projects they're doing where people were kind of breaking out of the molds of the gallery. And for me, at the moment in time, I needed to have a very traditional gallery show. So if you go in there, you'll see things hanging on the wall and sitting on the floor. There's no bus tours. There's no kimchi workshops. But for me as an artist, that was the most important thing that I needed right now. And so I think it gave me this opportunity being in Miami, away from where I'm from, to realize that where I'm from is so important to my work, that influences my work. So I'm born in a town called Sacramento, California, which is a cow town, and the nearest big cultural center is San Francisco. So being that far from San Francisco and then starting getting interested in art in the 90s, being so far away, I'm not privy to what's going on in San Francisco then. I'm privy to what's trickling down to me is the San Francisco scene of the 50s and 60s. And so this is my rambling story saying that being in Miami, I finally got to see how that is defining my work. Like before, I didn't know that my origins are what makes my work, what is defining it and what is pushing it. So it was with a conversation with Felicia sitting over there, who came to see my show, that she helped me figure this out. So it was this moment of clarity that only the Bas Fisher could serve. So it's this environment where Jim said, I was hanging the show. He said, you can hang it however you want. It doesn't matter. Just ask me and I can help you. And the same with Naomi. And so it was that kind of just this completely open environment just kind of opened up this moment of clarity as an artist. So it was this just small moment, this epiphanous moment where I don't know, maybe for a month or two I'll feel clear about my work and know its direction.
Yeah.
So that was the amazing thing, and beside that they provided to me.
And the work that Richard's showing is work that's largely created on site in Detroit, and then documented. It's some ephemeral performances using sculpture, and also some of the small objects are on display that were used in these performances, in addition to photographs of the pieces on site.
So I guess my long rambling story about being in Sacramento in the 90s and San
This is
Francisco
a
trickling
plaque.
down to me like 30 years too late was like San Francisco had this big, like there was the kind of beat painters who are really physically into materials, and after that they have their own conceptualists like Terry Fox, David Ireland, and like kind of Tom Marione's early more Buddhist drawings, that there's more like a mystic conceptualism. And so then I
can you
find
tell
like
us the title of this piece?
oh, that's a device to pull clouds out of the sky. So it's pretty much just a little reflecting pool you hold in your hand to bring the sky into your hands.
Yeah.
Just saying that like all those kind of, all of a sudden like I have clarity that, oh my God, I'm a product of my geography. And I'm finally accepting it because of Jim and Naomi.
Cool. Cool. Well, while we scroll through these images, I'll maybe talk a little bit more some of the past shows. This is a show we did by Kembra Failer. The last one was by Bianca Cassidy. And, we're just so excited to have done all of these exhibitions. This is an image by Francine Spiegel from her first show in our gallery. And that was the first time she had ever done painting. All her work before was collages. She had had a small solo show in New York, but this was the first time that she had the chance to show these big paintings. Here's some work by Ryan Trecarton and Lizzie Fitch. They were working on a video project in Miami, and one thing we did with the space was we turned it over to them for a couple months, and they turned it over into a film set. And it gave them extra space and more opportunity to have more sets, and the sets then became an installation afterwards. And these are the sets that were used for some of his films that were recently shown at PS1. They're at the Rebel Collection. Mocha in North Miami did an exhibition of them as well. So, it's
Nancy Garcia.
Oh, yeah, here's some images by Nancy Garcia. She's a New York-based artist, but she also grew up in Miami.
Like Francine Spiegel.
As did Francine Spiegel, and as did the next artist we'll be seeing, Jessie Gold. Another sort of sub-initiative that we've been doing is trying to bring back artists who did grow up in Miami or do have a cultural connection to the city so that they can still be involved with what's happening, and to be a bridge so that Miami's not just about the provincial, but really turning local into a community, and a community that can have threads out abroad and nationally. Yeah, these are by Jessie Gold. This is a performance that she staged within her installation. She's also a dancer and a choreographer, so her work goes between painting, performance, video, and we ended up having a talk in there, and so her paintings became, which she made both as art objects as paintings, but also as stage sets, became also a set for our talks and our lectures. This is Scott Cunningham doing a poetry reading. He runs an organization called the University of Wynwood and is also the director of an organization called Oh Miami, which is a poetry festival that happened in April. So we've been involved with not just art, but also with literature, with writers, trying to have it be like just a hub for all sorts of activities. Here's a talk by A.L. Steiner and Kate Hardy, artists who are based in New York, but again, Steiner grew up in Miami, so we're still bringing her in. We're currently doing a postcard book with her that will be released very soon, with her and Z Drucker. There's an image somewhere in there of that. It's the one that says before and after. So it's this kind of collaboration between these two artists where they're taking this identity of gender and turning it on its head, and we thought it's a really amazing format for that would be a postcard book.
I was going to say, one thing that's been great about the past couple of years is like how I think Scott Cunningham is a great example of someone who's started the University of Wynwood a similar time that we received the Knight Foundation grant. And so there are all these sort of like nodes that are collaborating within Miami, and there is a really sense that there's like a community happening and building upon itself. Mm-hmm. So just want to interject that. Yeah.
Oh, well, here, this is another good point. These are some of our fundraising editions. This one is by Corey Archangel. We released this a year ago. This one's by Seth Price, which we also released a year ago. A year ago, we did prints with Corey, Seth, Olaf Breuning, and Kate Hardy. And this year, we're doing prints by myself, Jim, Sharon Hayes, and Ben Jones. This is my print, and the next one is by Ben Jones. Another way that we're trying to turn artists run alternative art spaces on its head a little bit is through how we fundraise. As artists, we're constantly approached to do fundraisers, and it can be a little taxing. It's, you want to support a good cause, but as an artist, you don't even get a tax write-off when you donate your artwork. nothing out of it except the joy of supporting a wonderful cause. And there's some projects that we've supported that we've really liked the structure of it, so we wanted to keep our fundraising as ethical as everything else that we do. So what we've been doing with the print editions is, instead of asking artists to donate work, we create these print editions. That way the artist who does a print with us gets to keep a set of their own work, and they get to pick prints by other artists also who've done prints with us, turning it into a little bit of a print exchange so that everybody really benefits from this. The artist doing the edition, the space, and of course the person who ends up with the print. So this has been a really great thing that we've been doing. And the artists that we've been doing are of such stellar international quality that we couldn't be happier. Since we did the edition with Corey, he had a solo show at the Whitney, and of course Seth Price has been in the Venice Biennial and all over the place. And Sharon Hayes, who we're doing an edition with this year, recently found out that next year she's also going to be doing a full floor solo show at the Whitney Museum in New York as well. So we find it really awesome that we're able to kind of interact with artists on so many different levels, whether they're emerging, whether they're kind of getting their footing settled a little more. Yeah, do you have anything to add to that, Jim? Or?
Not really.
Yeah. Cool.
Anything from you guys?
And yeah, there'll be some more images soon of some of our earlier shows. Of Jessica Dickinson, I think we didn't get to credit her image by name yet, but that'll be coming out soon too. Cool. Perhaps, does anyone have any questions for us, or want to know more about anything in particular? Oh, back there? Oh, there's something back.
Hi.
Hello.
We're in a very commercial situation here in the middle of the convention center, but the question I wanted to ask is more about a nonprofit artist-run space and how, whatever, the situation of the attention that's created by a fair like this and by a week like this helps in your year-round activities, whether it's talking about reaching out to artists from other cities in this print exchange, also showcasing artists from New York and from other places. I'm just wondering how this has changed the ball game for you.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, on the one hand, when we started the art space, Art Basel already started, so we don't have the comparison of before or after the art fair, but
I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Art Basel.
it's true, I wouldn't have met Jim without Art Basel. But
I came to do a project several years ago and stayed after I moved down here a year later. But
yeah.
I think one thing about, you know, a lot of times our communities can be very provincial and sort of raise boundaries. And I think one thing we've learned from Art Basel in some ways is that you see the benefits of well, we reap the benefits of like the whole entire world coming here to Miami, and I think you see that how useless it is to raise boundaries, and like the other 11 months of the year is about sort of creating something here in Miami that can have impact, you know, like reach out to communities outside of Miami.
Yeah. And even like maybe one really clear way that the experience of Art Basel has affected it is living in Miami. We know why we think Miami's awesome. We know why we live here year round. And a lot of people only get to see Miami during Art Basel and don't know what it's like the rest of the year, and I really want to find out what it's like. And the idea for the entire Weird Miami project came out of that, where we often end up becoming tour guides to our city. Whenever a friend comes in town and they're in a hotel in South Beach and they're like, what else is there to do here? And we're like, first, get off South Beach, you know? And then we find ourselves becoming the person who shows them like where there's like a urban farm, where is there a cool little bar, where's it, just a wig shop, I don't know. And we ended up doing that on our own, and we decided, what would it be like if we just could do that for everyone? Because every artist we knew was in a similar situation. Every artist had their special haunts that really is what they enjoyed and informed who they are as a person, who they are as an artist, how their art practice grows, and what would it be like to share that with other people. And that's really where we started the idea of the Weird Miami Bus Tours, and it was a summer project that we did. And now that we have funding to do it again, we're planning to start it again next year during Art Basel. So that would be a great way to really see how we're trying to take people who are coming in town to experience Miami on an art world perspective, more into the nitty-gritty, local, real deal perspective. So hopefully you guys will be able to come and join us on some tours next year. Yeah.
And I just to add something, I think that the art world is a big, complex machine, and it includes Animal. Well, actually, I was thinking it's more of a fungus. And because, mycelia are these little invisible mushroom roots that basically cover everything in the world. And then the mushrooms pop up here and there and here and there. Some of the mushrooms are really big, like Art Basel. Some of the mushrooms are stinky, slimy, interesting. And so I think maybe artists themselves are the mycelia, are the connections between all of these sort of different parts of the machine, or whatever metaphor we're using. So, without artists, there wouldn't be Art Basel. Without artists, there wouldn't be artist-run spaces. And often, you can see in the images that we've shown, it's the same artists sometimes in both of these places, and they have different functions within sort of the conversation, and they have related functions within the conversation, and it's just really great to be part of both.
Yeah. Great. Any other questions? Or there's one.
I'm curious, with this space, are you sort of relentlessly...
Can you start the question over? Sorry.
Okay.
Thanks.
With your commitment in your sort of manifesto of what your purposes are you just relentlessly non-commercial? If somebody walks in and likes that and wants to buy it, what do you do?
We get really confused when someone wants to buy something. Sorry, Richard.
No. We're thrilled. I mean, it's a funny thing. It's a really important thing to talk about, because it's really important to do experimental work, but we're people. We need a roof over our head. We need to eat. We need health insurance, which we don't necessarily have. But it's really important to support art and buy artwork. So we try to facilitate that. And if anybody does come in and wants to buy a work, we try to help them figure that out with the artist. Because often the shows aren't conceived with a price tag or conceived with the aim of selling. But of course, we're functional artists in the world and in the market, and we want to be able to support ourselves and the people we show. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Cool. Okay.
Cool. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you
Thanks
so much.
Yeah.